Hello and welcome to the Allycast. Today, the guest is me. And I have promised to do this for a while and I've not sort of got around to it. So it's just basically just going to be me talking about me, how I got into tabbing. And I know I've alluded to the story a couple of times about where that came from, but I thought tonight would be or today, depending on how you listen to it, will be a good time to go into that. I was supposed to be recording the podcast tonight, but I've had to delay it till tomorrow night because the person's a little bit busy and I'm really excited about the interview. So I'm up here anyway. My wife's downstairs doing some sort of music class via Zoom, so I might as well just do this podcast. So so me getting into tabbing, it probably started. I'll go back a little bit further. I was always, once I came out the Air Force, because when I was in the Air Force, I absolutely hated the fitness side of things. But when I came out, did nothing for a few years apart from work, all the usual jobs that us guys do when we come out the forces, so security, driving, all sorts of things like that. And it was probably around about 5 years ago that I started to get back into my fitness, and I got back on a bike after many years of not doing that, and did many different events, all the sportives that you do on a bike, and also did my own thing as well. And I'd signed up for the Coast to Coast in a day. Well, tried to sign up for the Coast to Coast in a day on a bike, and it was just sold out. Couldn't do it. Desperate to do it. So I thought, sorry, I'm just going to do it on my own. So I went and got the train up to Carlisle, across to Whitehaven with my bike, and then decided I was going to cycle from Whitehaven right over the other side to Wallsend, over to the East Coast, and do that. So that was probably the first big challenge event I did, and that was probably about 5 years ago. Really enjoyed that, and decided that obviously just your normal sort of cycling around the lanes wasn't for me, and I needed to do endurance style events. So did a few more sportives, and then about 3.5 years ago decided I was going to have another crack at the Coast to Coast. But this time I was just going to go from Carlisle, follow the route of Hadrian's Wall, end up in Newcastle, finish. That was it, just to cycle the Hadrian's Wall route rather than do the full Coast to Coast. So I got the train up to Carlisle, jumped off the train there, rode my bike down to the hotel I booked for the night, which happened to be the Eddie Stobart Hotel, which, if you've never stayed in the Eddie Stobart Hotel in Carlisle, if you think of probably the worst barracks that you've ever actually stayed in, and then make it 10 times worse, it's like that. It was somewhere that you really want to spend a romantic night with your wife if you're going to go away. But it was all right for the night before the challenge. So stayed there. Next day, started off on what was like a really sort of wet and murky day, with all my kit on my bike, and off I went. Had a really good day. By sort of 10 o'clock, the murk had gone and the sun was battering down. It was really, really hot. So I was cycling over the top, and if you've never done the Hadrian's Wall route, you sort of go out from Carlisle on a really flat bit, and then you climb up towards Hadrian's Wall, and then you basically cycle along the top until you drop down into Hexham, and then it's fairly flat again back into Newcastle. So it's a fairly easy sort of route if you want to do the challenge. So I did that, but yeah, it was a really, really hot day that day, and I was probably getting a little bit dehydrated along the way, but I was topping up on the fluids and felt absolutely fine, really. I think I did it in about 6 hours from Newcastle from Carlisle to Newcastle. So it was good. Checked into my hotel there, got my bike into the hotel, and about half an hour's kit, and then thought, right, I'm going to go out now. I'm going to nip down to Wetherspoons on the front there, on the quay in Newcastle. I'm going to have something to eat. I'm going to come back, get my head down, jump the train home the next day. So went down there. Again, it was a really nice sunny night. So I had something to eat in Wetherspoons, had a pint, had another pint, had a few more pints. And yeah, probably had a bit of a skinful really before I went back to the hotel. And I remember going back to the hotel that night, and it just seemed really, really hot in the hotel. Like sweating. And it wasn't, although it was a sunny night, it wasn't that warm, but I was absolutely burning up in that hotel that night. So next morning I get up, not feeling too great really, but just hangover, not great, and just feeling hot. And jumped on the train, got the train home, 3-hour journey over from Newcastle on the train, back home, and yeah, that was it really. Still not feeling good, but I just cycled 100 odd mile, and yeah, had a skinful of ale, so why am I going to feel that great? Home the next day, and then went to bed that night, woke up in the morning with what just felt like the worst flu I've ever had. It was just absolutely shocking. So just didn't feel great all that weekend. Phoned in sick for work on the Monday, and just stayed off. And I don't really get ill, so it just felt really, really, really bad. So all that week, again, I was off work, just couldn't go back in, and it just gradually got worse and worse through that week. Towards the end of the week, beginning of next week, I can't really remember, because I got a little bit better halfway through, and then just started to feel worse again. And I got to a point really where I was up all night. I had pains in my back. I could hardly breathe. I was coughing, and I just can't describe it. I'd never felt that ill in my life, to the point where I think it was about after a week, and I was just going further and further down. And my wife just said, "Right, you're going to A&E, because I just couldn't get a appointment to the doctors." Straight into A&E. Got there. I was examined by a doctor. I was taken into the back, and the doctor was basically telling me, "Look, you've got pneumonia. You're really ill. Stay where you are." And I'd never thought to get to that point, but I was at that point in that bed where I wanted either one or two things to happen. I wanted to either just get better, or I wanted to just die, because it was just that bad. I wouldn't have. I just didn't care which one of them it was, but I just needed what I was feeling to stop at that time. So I was admitted to the hospital that night. Went upstairs, pumping me full of antibiotics and doing everything you could. Wife went home, and again, I was not feeling any better. Even the next day, the doctors were saying, you've had a fair whack of antibiotics there and pain relief, and you should be feeling better. I just wasn't feeling better at all. So it was about 2 or 3 days later, I was lying in a hospital bed. Again, could hardly breathe. Felt really, really bad. Doctor came and examined me. Said he was going to change the antibiotics, give me something a little bit stronger. When what they were already giving me was industrial strength. And there was a nurse there, and I do not remember her name. I can remember her face to this day, because she probably saved my life. And as the doctor walked away, I just coughed, and there was a little bit of blood on the tissue where I coughed, and she just said, do you do a lot of exercise? So I do a bit. And to me, once you've sort of built up to a level where you do endurance events, you don't feel as if you're doing, it's just normal to you, isn't it? I was like, I do a bit. And she was like, well, I'm going to get you down for a CT scan, because something else going on here. And she, without the doctor being there, just booked me in for this CT scan. And I was down there within half an hour having a CT scan. Had it wheeled back up to my bed, and I was in the bed in the hospital, and I just needed to go to the toilet. And I was trying to get out of bed to get into this wheelchair or whatever to go to the toilet. And this nurse and this doctor appeared. I said, stay where you are. You're going nowhere. I was like, look, so I just need to go to the toilet. And the doctor was just really blunt and said, look, you shouldn't even be alive. Get back into bed now. It turned out at that point that I had in the region of 20 blood clots in my heart and lungs. Didn't know where they come from. Didn't know how they got there. The theory was that maybe they'd started as deep vein thrombosis in my legs. But, and on top of that, I had pneumonia. The first symptom of these blood clots, or pulmonary embolisms as they call them, is usually death, is what the doctor told me. So it was in a pretty serious state there. So I was basically told to stay in bed. They would get me on blood thinners, pump them into me, and basically just don't move. And that was it. So I ended up being in hospital for probably about two or 3 weeks. And just when I thought I was getting better and was going to get discharged, I'd get worse again. I'd have the chest pains. I'd have pains in the back. And pain just like I've never felt before. But eventually came to the point, say 2 or 3 weeks later, again, a lot of it was just a blur, because I was off the head on not only the antibiotics, but I was on morphine at the time, and Zapain, as many Zapain as could stick down my neck I was on, trying to make me feel better. But it comes to the point where they're going to discharge me. As the doctor discharged me that day, I basically said to him, look, what's the sort of prognosis here? What's going to happen? Am I going to run again? Am I going to cycle again? I'm going to do all the things. And he basically just said to me, look, you're going to have significant lung damage. The X-rays show that you've already got significant scarring in your lungs. You need to find a new normal. You're not going to run. You're not going to cycle long distances again. You need to find something a little bit less taxing. And I left hospital that day. probably feeling the most down I've felt in my life, because even though I was getting better, I felt that my life was over, because I just couldn't get out on the bike anymore. I couldn't do the things I wanted to do. So I went home, and I was signed off work for a month. I can remember one day I was sat on the sofa. I'd been on eBay or something, and I bought myself some sort of games console and thought, well, this is it. This is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. And I played on that for an hour and thought, this isn't what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. My wife had gone back to work, and I needed coffee mate. Believe it or not, I remember I needed coffee mate for my coffee. So I thought I'll just walk around to Tesco's. Tesco's from my house is probably about 250 yards. I walked out the house, I got out the front door, I got 10 yards, and I wasn't sure if I was going to make it back to the house because I couldn't breathe. I just had no breath in my body to do that. And I thought, I just need to turn around and go home because I'm not going to make it to Tesco's. So I went back home, and again, just felt in the depths of despair, really. And it seemed to confirm what the doctor had told me as regards me not being able to do the things that I'd done before. So again, it was just TV, it was a bit of reading, and that's pretty much all I could do. I started to walk more and more, got out with my wife, we were walking the dogs. I remember walking a mile one day and thinking, wow, I've actually got out and I've actually walked a mile, which was around the local woods, Eastern Woods, around where I live. But I came home that day, my wife was going to work again the next day, and I thought, I've walked a mile there. And from where I was sort of 2 weeks ago, where I couldn't go and get my coffee mate from Tesco's, that's pretty good going. So I thought, I'm going to try and do another mile today. So instead of just going out in my normal gear, I thought, I'll put my running stuff on. I'm going to go and do a mile. So I went out, and I started walking, and probably about a quarter of a mile. I thought, I'm going to try and walk a bit faster. So I walked a bit faster. And I think during that mile, I probably did 2 stints of a steady jog for probably about 30 seconds to a minute. As I did that, I got back home. I can remember that run till this day, and it is the best run that I've ever had in my life, because that seemed to open the door for me then to take things further. And I thought, I can run. It's not something I've ever been really good at before, but I can actually go out there and do some running. And if I've built up from not being able to walk 10 yards to walking a mile, to doing a mile, to doing a mile, and doing a bit of a jog in it, then maybe I can do a bit more. So I found the Couch to 5K app on my phone, and I decided that once I could probably go out and do half and half, walking and running, and then graduate onto the Couch to 5K app, which I did. I religiously followed that Couch to 5K app. If there was a rest day, I took a rest day. If it told me to walk, I walked. If it told me to run, I run. I just followed it, and I thought, if I follow this religiously, then hopefully I will get somewhere. I followed the Couch to 5K plan, and I ran 5K in the end. And once I'd run that 5K, I knew that what I was going to do next was to prove the doctors wrong beyond all reasonable doubt, that I could do endurance events like I did before. But unlike before, where I'd been on the bike, I've now found this love of running. And I think I'd found the love of running because running was the thing that had basically got me back into fitness, and I felt it had given me my life back again. So I started looking for events, and I thought, what can I do? So the first event I found, this was about the November, this would have been sort of October, November by the time we'd run the first 5K. So I looked for the half marathon in sort of January, February time. I found the Blackpool half marathon. I thought, it's on the prom, it's going to be flat, perfect, I'm going to do this. And I had done a half marathon before. I'd done the Anglesey half a couple of years before, because I wanted to do a half marathon, and it nearly killed me. And I think it was about 2 hours, 45 minutes that I came in on that marathon, because I didn't really do any training for it. I've been cycling. I thought, well, I've got a level of fitness. I can probably complete a half marathon. It's something to take off the bucket list. So I've done that. So it was about 2 hours, 45 minutes. I think it was my first half marathon. I've been saying I've been 2 years before. So I signed up for the Blackpool half marathon. The day came, I trained for it. I hadn't run a half marathon distance. The most I'd done was about 9 to 10 miles, something like that. My wife took me up, we drove to Blackpool, dropped me off. I started off, I was working for Aldi at the time, and they just got the Teenage Cancer Trust as their charity. And I thought, I'm going to raise some money for the Teenage Cancer Trust and just do this half marathon. I did that half marathon. It was flat, but obviously I'd forgotten the fact that it gets a bit windy as well, maybe on the coast. So I did that, and I came in at 1 hour and 50 on that half marathon. And I think I had a cold as well that day. I'd had a cold, but I thought nothing is going to stop me from doing this. And I went out and I did that half marathon, and I thought that is it. I can pretty much do anything that I want to do. So I need to just crack on and find a new challenge. And obviously the next step up for me from the half marathon was going to be doing a full marathon. So the Manchester Marathon is in April. Get my name down for that, sign that. It's double what I've just done. I can take my time. I can complete it. I can do it. I know I'm going to do it. I've got the mental capacity to do that now. I've got the physical capacity to do that. So I'm going to sign up for it. So I signed up for the Manchester Marathon, again, for the Teenage Cancer Trust at the time to raise a bit of cash. And in the meantime, I was looking for other events. I thought, what can I do after this? And I can't even remember how it came up, because it had never even crossed my mind that there was military-style endurance events, or that you could stick a pack on your back and do some sort of event like that. And I think I was just looking for races, and the fan dance race came up, Avalanche Endurance Events fan dance race. It just came up on Facebook, I think. And I'd been fascinated with sort of Brecon Beacons and the test marches since I was a kid. I remember watching the documentary The Paris with my dad, and I remember seeing them tabbing across the Brecon Beacons, and thinking, wow, these guys are superhuman. So when I saw this event come up, the fan dance, I thought, I need to sign up for it. So I signed up for the fan dance, which would have been in July of that year. So after the marathon they were done, and bought all the kit, I thought, right, I'm going to do this. I remember going into work and saying to the guys, yeah, I've got another event, so I'm doing one of the SES test marches. I think you'll just thought I was absolutely bonkers for doing that. So the time of the Manchester Marathon came around. I went out, I completed that. It was 4.5 hours. Happy with that time. I was happy just to complete it. I knew that at that point, I could pretty much do anything that I wanted to do. Again, it had improved my mental state, it improved my physical state to know I could do that. A week after I'd finished the Manchester Marathon, I went for a checkup with my consultants who had been looking after me in hospital. I was going for a lung x-ray. So he sent me down for this lung x-ray, and then I sat down with him in his office. And he showed me the lung x-rays that he'd taken the year before. And my right lung was pretty much all just in shadow. And he said, this was the scarring. This is the scarring that I told you. You're never going to get rid of. This is the damage to your lungs that I told you that it just doesn't heal. It doesn't get any better. And he asked me at that point, have you been doing any exercise? And I said to him, well, yeah, I've just completed the Manchester Marathon. And he's like, right. And then he produced the x-rays that had just been taken. And although there was still shading on there, it was vastly reduced. And he said, you know, this is testament to the exercise that you've done. He said, you know, increased blood flow into your lungs. It is going to improve that. We can't tell our patients when you go to hospital to go on a marathon. But whatever you're doing, carry on doing it. And then he says to me, which marathon did you do again? I said, the Manchester. And it turned out that the consultant had also done the Manchester Marathon on the same day that I'd done it, but in 15 minutes slower than I'd done it. At which point, when he heard the time, he discharged me, and I never had to go back and see him again. So yeah, so from there came Fan Dance Day. Travelled down to Brecon Beacons. My wife came down with me, and I started off vastly underestimated the fan dance, as I've alluded to before. It was a hard day in the hills. I'd convinced myself that once I got to the bottom of Jacob's Ladder and I'd gone into that Roman road, that I was on a flat road. And then you thought to myself, once I get to the turnaround point, I've got another flat road. all the way back to the bottom of Jacob's Ladder, and it was just that climbing and done. Obviously, I realised when I turned around that it certainly wasn't flat, and I had a long uphill struggle to get. But I completed it that day, and from then on, I knew that, there was nothing that I couldn't achieve if I just set my mind to it. Now, when I look back to the illness that I had, that at the time seemed like the worst possible thing that could ever happen to me, it was probably the best. It changed my outlook on life in so many ways. It made me take on the physical challenges, which just improve your mental state and make you realise the things that you can achieve in other areas of life. I was in a job at the time that I didn't particularly enjoy, with people that I didn't particularly like. And from there, I knew that I could basically get any job I wanted, do any work I wanted. And from there, ended up in the job that I'm in now, which I love, with people that I really, really like, people who I've got the same sort of mindset as me. So, yeah. So it's all about that. Again, I think I've mentioned it in the podcast before, that post-traumatic growth rather than PTSD. So from there, I just started setting myself more and more challenges. I think it was a year or maybe 18 months later, my wife had said to me, what do you want for your birthday? And I was like, I don't know. She went out to visit somebody or go to the shop or something. Probably not go to the shop, because she doesn't really do any shopping, that's my job. But she went out and she came back, and I said, look, I've sorted my birthday present out. I've booked myself a parachute jump. And when I'd looked at the website page, there was two ways I realised I could do my first parachute jump. I could do it strapped to somebody else as a tandem, or the place that I booked in Tilstock, they actually did a 1-day static line training course, which would culminate at the end of the day with a solo jump. So I went for that, ended up doing sort of 5 or 6 jumps after that, really enjoyed it. But again, that's something that I feel I've done now. And I think I probably might go back and do it one day. But who knows? I don't know. There are other challenges out there to do. So that's pretty much my story of how I got into tabbing. One thing I think that the present situation that we're in with sort of COVID-19 has got us all down as this lockdown state. And I feel that if we'd have been in this probably 4 or 5 years ago, before all this happened to me, I'd probably gone a bit stir crazy now. But one thing that I realised after the illness was, as well as attending to my physical fitness, you've got to attend a lot to your mental fitness as well. And for me, that's just constantly gaining knowledge. And the knowledge that I've gained has changed a lot in my life. In that, I don't eat meat. I try to avoid dairy. I'm not a saint. You know what I mean? If I go out and all they've got is normal milk, that's all I'm going to have. I don't touch meat at all. And I believe, for me, that certainly keeps me healthy. So it's an ethical choice and a health choice for me as well. And I think the more sort of reading and things I've done about that enables me to keep that up. I've had a bit of a mixed relationship with the booze through my life. And when I came out of hospital, I didn't drink for about 2 years. I actually had my first drink again when I got to the DZ off my first parachute jump. And it was the last jump of the day. And the last jump of the day, the tradition is that you're handed a beer when you land. And I think just the sheer relief of still being alive and standing up, because on that first parachute jump as well, I completely missed the drop zone and landed on the concrete runway after flaring and my parachute too soon as well. I had a drink then, and I'm back in the stage now, but I've realised that probably drinking is probably one of the most unhealthy things you can do to your body. So I've ditched that again now after a stint back on it. So pretty much that's the story of me and how I got into tabbing. And I've obviously looked for other events since then. I've looked for an ultra to do, which I completed this year, which was the Brecon to Cardiff Ultra, and that's certainly whetted my appetite to do more of those. I very much doubt I'll ever do a marathon again. A marathon. I did the Chester Marathon pretty soon after I did the Manchester Marathon as well. But that just confirmed to me that marathon distances for me just are not fun. Whereas the ultra marathon I did earlier this year during Storm Kira was probably the most fun I've had with my clothes on for a long time. I really, really enjoyed that. It's a completely different discipline, a completely different style of fitness. And if anybody is thinking of doing an ultra and is not sure you can do it, you can. And it's just about going slower and really being sensible about your rest and getting out there and do it. So if I think about my training for the ultra that I've just completed this year, because I know a lot of people have also asked me about that, I only really started training for that last November, and the ultra was in February. Obviously I had a good standard of fitness anyway, but I started training in November. I followed a pretty rigid training plan on that, and I realised that the rest days are really important on that. And the other thing that's really important is to do back-to-back long runs. You've got to get used to running on tired legs, because the whole ethos around an ultra is just getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. And I think that's something that the Fan Dance and the Test March series has certainly set me up for, is being comfortable with being uncomfortable. And getting out there on those tired legs and just running. So your back-to-back long runs are certainly the things that you need to be doing if you're thinking about doing an ultra. So I could probably ramble on for ages and ages, but that's probably nearly half an hour of me talking about me. I'm going to be recording another podcast tomorrow. I'm really excited to get that out. So it'll be out pretty soon after this. If you've got any questions for me about anything at all, if you're just getting into the tabbing world, if you're just getting into sort of doing ultras or what have you, and you just want to ask me, I'm no expert, but I can certainly tell you what my experiences are. And I can maybe put you in a direction of somebody else who's got a little bit more knowledge. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. And I'll see you on the next podcast. Or is it that further?